Welcome back, everybody, to the KC Sports Report. I'm your host, Michael Darcy, and today I have the great pleasure of being joined by my guy, Kyle Collier. He is the producer of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB, and in this video, we are going to talk about the latest update on Chiefs defensive end George Karlaftis. According to Ricky Scoops on Twitter, who I can't believe I'm even mentioning that, but he's been very accurate in the past, the Chiefs are closing in on a new deal with George Karlaftis, expected to be done during camp, but there is serious momentum towards getting an extension done. Again, that is per Ricky Scoops on Twitter, and I think it's very interesting that following the Trey Smith extension, where he becomes the highest paid guard in NFL history, you think that a lot of the attention would then be shifted on Trent McDuffie. But in fact, it's actually, as of right now, being highlighted on George Karlaftis. Kyle, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think a George Karlaftis extension might get done?
Yes, and I think it would be wiser to get Karlaftis done before McDuffie because the defensive end, defensive line, franchise tag is much more expensive than the cornerback franchise tag. And we all saw the contract that Sauce Gardner just signed. 4 years, 120 mil, right? But McDuffie is up there with those guys. In fact, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, he kind of does a ranking of all the position groups in the NFL. He released his cornerback ones this morning. Number 1, Pat Surtain, Defensive Player in the Year, obvious. Number 2, Derek Stingley Jr. from Houston. Number 3, Denzel Ward. Number 4, Trent McDuffie, and then Gardner at 5. Trent McDuffie can ask for $100 million plus. Absolutely. Now, I know he's not going to be he's not typically your Pat Surtain, Sauce Gardner outside cornerback guarding the biggest fellas. He's mostly going to be in the slot. But the thing is, I think Trent McDuffie will cost more than George Karlaftis. And don't get me wrong, George Karlaftis is a solid NFL player, right? Defensive linemen are hard to come by. But frankly, I think his game is helped out so much by Chris Jones. Chris Jones, defensive tackle pass rush win rate last year, tied for first with DeForest Buckner. In the top 20, you will not find George Karlaftis on the edge in pass rush win rate. So basically what I'm saying is George Karlaftis needs a good cast around him. And we've been seeing these defensive lineman contracts come out. It's best to hop on it now before it gets way too expensive. Because right now, TJ Watt, $41 million per.
Goodness.
Karlaftis is not getting that, but good Lord, get it done while you can before it rises even higher.
When I saw that TJ Watt contract, I audibly laughed out loud. The fact that he's making $41 million a season is ridiculous. I can't even fathom that much money. I mean, if you filled a room with that, is that touching the ceiling? That is unbelievable. That is so much money per year, and he deserves it. He's the best defensive end in football. But I think that you made a fantastic point that George Karlaftis is not a number one guy. And you said it perfectly. He was not, top 5 in, win rate. There's a reason why the Chiefs' defensive line struggled when Chris Jones was not on the field. And I think he's a great number 2. But you cannot pay a great number 2 number 1 money. He's not an elite edge rusher. That's just the plain fact of the matter. And the Chiefs cannot pay him like they paid Trey Smith. Trey Smith's not the best right guard in football. They paid him like he is the best right guard in football. And I can see why they did that, because they've had offensive line struggles. Right now, George Karlaftis' calculated market value, according to SpotTrack, is $22.2 million a season. They project him to get a 3-year, $66 million contract, and honestly, that's not a bad deal, but even seeing George Karlaftis getting paid that much, it kind of irks me a little bit, just because, the Chiefs don't just have infinite money to throw around, and I think that George Karlaftis should basically be paid like someone who's like Mike Dana rather than a TJ Watt. And I don't know if that's going to be something that he'd be even interested in, but he only had 8 sacks and 60 pressures last year. So you can't pay that guy like he's a definitive number 1.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And all those things will be used against him in contract negotiations for sure. You're absolutely right. He's not a number one. He's a number two. He's more of that. Uh, Frankly, a good number of his sacks are coverage sacks. He's been helped out by having a great supporting cast around him, like I already mentioned. Um, but Chris Jones, frankly, he's not getting any younger. So what worries me is you put 25 per into George Karlaftis, and I'm not saying Chris Jones is going to have some steep decline, but he will decline. He's 31, 32 now. It's going to happen. Um, so George Karlaftis will just need even more help, and if he's making 25 per, I'm going to need more than 8 sacks per season. And number two, Brett Veach has to nail every defensive line draft pick he's made. Omar Norman Lott and Ashton Gelati got to be monsters pretty early. Not monsters, but they've got to show that they have the potential to be solid contributors, like George is, because that'll be an expensive offensive and defensive line that's not going to leave much room for much else.
When if Chris Jones retired tomorrow, would you think that George Karlaftis is capable of being a number one? No. I'd say the Chiefs should probably try to trade for a number one defensive tackle or an edge rusher that's truly a game changer, like a TJ Watt or a Max Crosby. I'm not saying those guys are available via trade, but if you just look at the formula for a winning football team, a great football team, you always have someone that can get to the quarterback, whether it's an edge rusher, a defensive tackle, and George Karlaftis just isn't that guy. And I'm not saying that he's not deserving of a contract extension, but if we had to just pick between Trent McDuffie and George Karlaftis is the odd man out.
Yeah, I think I agree with you because in recent past, although I will say about McDuffie, we've never seen Brett Veach pour significant assets into a cornerback besides Trent McDuffie, to be fair. He traded up in the first round to go get him. Everybody else, I don't think Brett Veach has taken a member of the secondary higher than Brian Cook in the second round.
Yeah.
But other than that, he gets his corners in the fourth and fifth, like L'Jarius Sneed in the fourth, Jalen Watson in the seventh. He doesn't put significant resources into quarterback, so we'll see if he bucks the trend there. But overall, Karlaftis this year, this year really does have to be his quote unquote breakout year. You know, if they sign him to a 3-year 66 like you're talking about, I want double digit sacks.
Yeah, well, that should be the expectation.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm worried about because $66 million over 3 years, it's not like the Frank Clark contract, but guess what? It's getting close. And
Yeah.
I feel like the Chiefs made a big mistake with that. They can't afford to make that mistake with George Karlaftis. And that's unfair to him because he's not Frank Clark, but you cannot pay a good player great money. And that's what it would be if you paid George Karlaftis. And I want to talk more about this situation, and we'll do that right after this ad break. The Hollywood Casino at Kansas Speedway is the place to be. With over 1,500 slot machines, 35 table games, 4 restaurants, and a new ESPN Bet sportsbook, there are plenty of ways to find your fun. For more chances to win, follow them on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the Rice Real Estate Group, Kansas City's premier partner in real estate. Whether you're buying, selling, or investing, you'll receive a tailored experience designed just for you. Specializing in residential, commercial, and investment properties, the dedicated team over at the Rice Real Estate Group helps guide you through every transaction, including navigating those short, complex sales. With a commitment to personal one-on-one service, they will ensure that you are supported every step of the way. You can achieve your goals with expertise, care, and a customized approach that truly makes a difference. Ready to make your next move? The Rice Real Estate Group is here to make it happen. For more information, call 816-819-9333. Huge thanks to the sponsors that support this channel all off-season long. Now, Kyle, I want to ask you, when it comes down to paying a guy like George Karlaftis, someone that has a lot of love from the coaching staff, a lot of trust from the organization, do you think that they might do to him what they did to Nick Bolton and maybe overpay a little bit to keep a guy in Kansas City?
I think that's fair. And another thing George has going for him is he's only 24 right now. Same with McDuffie. But what we've seen this offseason is that the Chiefs are keeping the youth. They trade away Joe Tooney and they give the contract extension to their 20. I think Trey Smith is 25 now. Their 25-year-old right guard. We see it in the secondary. You kind of last offseason or this offseason technically, you had the choice of of keeping Justin Reed for probably the exact same contract that he signed with New Orleans, or keeping Nick Bolton, and they chose the 25-year-old. So that's another thing George has going for him. And I'll bring it up again. It's just the guys next to him have to be on too.
Yeah, no, and that's just putting so much pressure on your drafting ability. And listen, that Brett Veach is no stranger to that, but at the same time, you don't want to have to be in that position every single draft cycle, needing to go into the draft and hit on 3 players. And I think that that's kind of been a theme with the Chiefs, that they've missed at certain positions and they've had to spend a lot more resources to address it. I mean, how many times did they spent money on the left tackle or spent a draft pick on the offensive line or the defensive line even? They have poured a lot of resources into the defensive line, and the defensive line wasn't all that great last year. And outside of Chris Jones, they have problems sacking the quarterback. And I don't know if it's financially smart to just give out contracts to guys that, yeah, you developed, yeah, you drafted, but you might be able to just do the same thing over again. Because George Karlaftis is the type of player that if you have a first-round pick, you could probably find that guy at pick 29 or 30. They did that. And so, yeah, I mean, there's obviously exceptions to that. Like they drafted Felix a couple years later, but at the same time, I think the Chiefs need to bank on their ability to, develop guys. And if you just look, they just paid Trey Smith $23.5 million a season. And by them doing that, someone's going to have to be, a budget cut. Someone's going to have to be, on the outside looking in because you just cannot pay everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, and who knows who that's going to be. I think they can end up keeping both Karlaftis and McDuffie, but like you said, the margin of error is just incredibly thin. If you decide to go that route. Now, looking in the future, I think Juwan Taylor, his contract can come off the books. Heck, Chris Jones, even Travis Kelce for sure. And then we'll see. But you really have to make a decision here. If you're going to go all in and pay both of them, you better be right, or somebody's getting fired.
Well, I'll tell you what, if Ashton Gelati or Omar Norman-Lott absolutely look like the, next guy on that defense, it makes George Karlaftis' departure a lot more stomachable. And so there is a silent amount of pressure. There's a little bit of pressure on those guys to succeed. And whether it's on, the front office or them, I do think that if those guys hit, George Karlaftis might not be here next year, or they might let him, play under the 5th-year option that all first-round picks get, and then after that you tag and trade him or something along those lines. But again, you cannot pay a good player great money. Kyle, do you have anything else you want to
add? No, but actually, yeah, I do.
Okay.
I haven't mentioned him yet, and I think every time I come on with you, I mention him. But Charles Omenihu being back and just having a full off season to just grind, right, is actually going to be huge for those 2 rookies you mentioned, Omar Norman-Lott and Ashton Gelati. Charles Omenihu being back should help out the defensive line as a whole, and I think they should be able to get to the quarterback a lot more this year, because last year, I think 2 years ago, they were second behind the Eagles, and then last year it just fell off a cliff. They were in the 20s as far as just total sacks. So this year, Charles Omenihu being back, I'm pumped for that. I know he kind of signed a 1-year prove-it deal. The contract year is undefeated, as the great Therese Paylor once said. So I am looking for an improved offensive line, and if George Karlaftis is doing that at $22 million per, so be it.
Well, I was going to say, Charles Omenihu, another guy that's going to be balling out because this is a 1-year deal contract here. You're going to have a lot of guys on that defensive line motivated to go out there and, perform their best in their contract year and then go get paid next offseason. Mm-hmm. The Chiefs are just going to have to be very careful with giving George Karlaftis a ton of money, because that's just going to make it harder to pay another guy. And I don't want to have all this money tied up in George Karlaftis when you could maybe spend that money on, securing a Trent McDuffie or another player that might be up for an extension here soon. So, Kyle, that is all the time we have in this video. My final question for you is, where can the people find your stuff?
Follow me on Twitter at Kyle Collier _810 on Twitter or X, or listen to me weekdays 2 to 6 on the program with Seren Petro.
And guys, all that stuff will be linked in the description of this video. Hit that like button, subscribe for more daily Chiefs content. Until next time, guys, thank you for watching, and as always, go Chiefs.